Picture this. You're sitting at a fancy restaurant. The waiter approaches with a silver platter. He lifts the dome with theatrical flair, and there it is. A plate of stuffed baby rodents, still steaming. You blink. Maybe it's the lighting. Nope. Those are definitely dead mice, stuffed with pork and pine nuts. The couple at the next table is already digging in. The woman is complimenting the seasoning. The man is asking for seconds. Welcome to dinner in ancient Rome, where luxury meant eating what we call wildlife crime today, where dessert came with a side of lead poisoning, and where the most popular condiment was basically fish corpses fermented in the Mediterranean sun until they reach peak funk. You think pineapple on pizza is controversial? Honey, you haven't seen anything yet. Romans were putting dormice on everything, and they were proud of it. They had laws trying to ban dormice because people were spending too much money on fancy rodents. Let that sink in. Tonight, we're dining with the empire that gave us roads, aqueducts, and the Colosseum. But also gave us recipes that would make Gordon Ramsay weep. Not from joy, from pure existential horror. This is the civilization that looked at a flamingo and thought, but how would it taste with 15 different spices? The Romans didn't just eat to survive. They ate to make a statement. That statement was, usually I have so much money I can afford to import a bird that is basically a living pink lawn ornament and turn it into soup. Every meal was performance art. Every ingredient was a flex. In imperial Rome, food wasn't just fuel. It was theater. It was ostentation so extreme, your toga might spontaneously combust from the sheer audacity. And nobody out-audacious the folks who wrote down all these recipes in what we now call the Apicius Cookbook. Compiled probably in the 5th century CE, this isn't your grandmother's recipe collection. Unless your grandmother was into boiling flamingos and stuffing dormice. In which case, we need to have a serious conversation about your family history. Every dish in Apicius reads like someone playing ingredient roulette while blindfolded. Pepper from India? Obviously. Wine from Greece? Basic. Sylphin from Libya? Now we're talking. Ostrich from North Africa? Perfect. If it was expensive, hard to transport, and made your dinner guests go, wait, what the hell is that? Then it was absolutely perfect. Roman elites didn't just eat to fill their stomachs. They ate to broadcast their wealth across the empire. It's like if someone today decided that every meal needed to include ingredients from at least 3 different continents and cost more than most people's monthly rent. You post your avocado toast on Instagram with a carefully curated filter. They carved entire dinner parties into marble reliefs for posterity. Same energy, different medium. Except their dinner parties involve significantly more dead exotic animals. Think of it like this. Today's luxury food scene has molecular gastronomy. Phones that taste like memories. Deconstructed everything. Spherified olives that explode in your mouth. Romans had that beat by 2,000 years. They were constructing flavors that shouldn't exist in nature. The wealthy Roman kitchen was basically a chemistry lab, run by people who thought more is more was a conservative approach to seasoning. They looked at regular food and said, this needs more fermented fish juice and maybe some extinct plant matter. And the best part? They documented everything. With the kind of obsessive detail usually reserved for military campaigns. Which is why we can sit here 2,000 years later, reading recipes and thinking, surely this is a translation error. Surely they didn't really eat that. They did. Oh boy, did they ever! Let's start with the foundation of Roman cuisine. The building block. The secret sauce. Literally, meat garum. Imagine fish sauce. Now imagine fish sauce that's been through a complete Roman makeover. Now imagine fish sauce having an existential crisis in the Mediterranean sun. This wasn't just fermented fish. This was fermented fish with attitude. Made from whole small. Fish or fish guts, salt, and pure audacity. Left to rot in giant stone vats under the blazing sun for months until it reached peak civilization-ending funk. The process was simple in theory, terrifying in practice. Take your fish entrails, add salt. Let nature take its course. Wait several months while your neighbors plot your assassination because of the smell. Strain through a basket. Congratulations, you've made garum. But Romans didn't just make one type. Oh no, that would be too simple. There was garum sociorum, the premium stuff that costs more than some people's houses. Regular garum for everyday use. And elec, the chunky bottom of the barrel paste that was basically fish rock concentrate. The smell was so intense that garum factories had to be built outside city limits. By law, the Romans conquered most of the known world, but they drew the line at living downwind from their condiment factories. Priorities, people. A guy named Aulus Umbricius Scaurus became the garum kingpin of Pompeii. His house had floor mosaics showing off his different sauce labels like some kind of ancient brand ambassador. Scaurus' premium fish rot, except no substitutes. Imagine being so proud of your decomposed marine life business that you put it on your home decor. But here's the thing that really gets me. Romans put this stuff on everything, and I mean everything. Bread, meat, vegetables, fruit, wine. Yes, wine. They mix fermented fish juice into their alcoholic grape juice. It's like if someone today decided ketchup belonged in coffee and somehow convinced everyone it was sophisticated. The business was so successful that archaeologists can track Roman trade routes just by following the broken garum amphoras scattered across the Mediterranean. Nothing says Roman civilization was here like leaving behind evidence of your questionable condiment choices for future generations to puzzle over. Romans were basically drinking this stuff. Not sipping, chugging. Modern fish sauce is subtle, a few drops to add umami depth. Romans measured garum in cups. It's like they took the concept of umami bomb and turned it into a literal explosion of fermented fish in every dish. Different regions had their own garum specialties. Spanish garum was legendary. African varieties had their own character. It was like wine terroir, except for rotted fish. Romans could probably tell you which coastline their fish sauce came from, just by the bouquet of decay. The wealthy had garum sommeliers, people whose entire job was knowing the subtle differences between various types of fermented fish juice. Imagine that business card. Garum consultant, expert in the fine art of aged fish decomposition. And the Romans wrote about garum like it was liquid gold, because in their economy, it basically was. Good garum cost serious money. Bad garum could ruin a dinner party faster than inviting your ex. The social implications of serving subpar fermented fish sauce were apparently devastating. Modern fish sauce is an ingredient. Roman garum was a lifestyle choice, a statement, a way of saying, I have arrived in society, and I have the fermented fish to prove it. Now, let's talk about the menu items that will get you arrested in most countries today, starting with dormice. Those adorable little creatures that hibernate through winter. Romans turned them into appetizers. And not just occasionally. This was mainstream luxury dining. The process was disturbingly systematic. Romans built special containers called gloraria, basically pottery penthouses for rodents. These weren't crude cages. They were purpose-built dormouse fattening facilities with air holes, ramps, and feeding areas. Like luxury hamster hotels, except the checkout process involved a cooking pot. They fed these little guys nuts, acorns, and chestnuts until they got so fat they could barely move. The goal was maximum plumpness. It's like a Roman weight gain program for woodland creatures. Imagine explaining this job at a dinner party. I'm in Dormouse Fitness. I help them bulk up for the table. The stuffing recipe is absolutely wild. Pork mince, pepper, pine nuts, and laser. That mysterious extinct spice we'll get to later. They hollowed out the dormouse and filled it like a tiny, furry turkey. It's like someone looked at a Disney character and thought, you know what this needs? A savory filling and some herbs. Laws actually tried to ban dormice consumption. Sumptuary laws designed to curb excessive luxury spending. Rome was so worried about people bankrupting themselves on fancy rodents that they made eating them illegal. Did it work? Of course not. Nothing makes rich people want something more than telling them they can't have it. The ban on dormice was about as successful as modern attempts to regulate caviar prices. When you make something illegal, you just make it more prestigious. Suddenly, every dinner party needed secret dormice, underground rodent speakeasies. The black market for stuffed woodland creatures was apparently thriving. Meanwhile, flamingos were getting the 5-star treatment at the other end of the exotic scale. Apicius gives us the complete recipe. And here's where modern food mythology gets it wrong. It wasn't just flamingo tongue. That's Hollywood nonsense. They cooked the whole damn bird. The flamingo preparation was elaborate. Pepper, cumin, coriander, that extinct laser plant, mint, rue sweet wine, and defrutum. That's 8 different flavor components for one bird. It's like they were trying to mask the fact that flamingo probably tastes like rubber chicken with an attitude problem. Flamingos had to be shipped from Africa. This wasn't like going to the local butcher. This required serious logistics, international trade agreements, diplomatic relations with provinces that had access to pink birds. It's the ancient equivalent of flying in Kobe beef, except the beef had wings and an attitude. The recipe suggests cooking flamingo the same way you cook parrot, which tells you everything about Roman priorities. They had so much experience cooking exotic birds that they could casually compare preparation methods. Oh, flamingo? Just like parrot, but pinker. Romans looked at nature's most photogenic bird and said, but how would it taste with 15 different spices? That level of commitment to culinary experimentation is admirable or deeply concerning, depending on your perspective. Then there's ostrich. Because regular chicken was apparently too pedestrian for Roman tastes. They needed the biggest bird they could find, shipped across the Mediterranean, and cooked with half the spice cabinet. The recipe for boiled ostrich reads like someone was desperately trying to make giant bird meat palatable. Ostrich required specialized hunting, specialized transport, and specialized cooking techniques. It's like the Romans looked at a map of Africa, pointed at the biggest bird they could find, and said, "Bring me that." The logistics alone must have been nightmare. But hey, if you're going to show off your wealth, why not do it with a bird taller than most Romans? Book 7 of Apicius is delicately titled Polytelis, which basically means expensive stuff. And boy, did Romans have a different definition of expensive than we do. We're talking about pig uterus, pig udders, parts of animals that modern butchers will quietly dispose of and never mention in polite company. But Romans weren't being gross for the sake of it. These weren't desperate survival foods. These were luxury items. Premium cuts, the kind of thing you serve to impress important guests. Cooked with wine, honey, exotic spices, and naturally gallons of that fermented fish sauce we talked about. The preparation methods were sophisticated. These weren't just random organ meat thrown into a pot with some salt. These were carefully developed recipes with specific techniques, precise seasoning, and detailed cooking instructions. Romans treated organ meat like we treat Wagyu beef today, with reverence and very particular preparation methods. Reading these recipes is like discovering a parallel universe where the gross parts became the fancy parts, where serving someone pig uterus was a sign of respect and hospitality, where offering a guest cow udder was basically saying, "I think you're pretty special." The Romans had this philosophy about using every part of the animal, not because they were poor and desperate, because they thought it showed culinary sophistication and respect for the creature that died for their dinner. It's actually kind of noble in a deeply unsettling way. Then we get to the snail situation. And let me tell you, the Roman approach to snail preparation was next level obsessive. This wasn't just, hey, let's eat some snails. This was, let's scientifically optimize snail fattening for maximum flavor and texture. The process is delightfully weird. First, you remove the snail's operculum. That's the little door they use to seal their shells. Then you submerge the snails in milk mixed with salt. Change the milk every day. Keep doing this until the snails get so fat they can't retreat into their shells anymore. It's like a Roman spa treatment for gastropods. Except instead of relaxation and rejuvenation, the end goal is optimal plumpness for consumption. The attention to detail is almost admirable. Almost. The milk fattening process could take weeks. Imagine having that job. What do you do for work? Oh, I'm in snail nutrition. I specialize in milk-based weight gain programs for garden pests. The Romans had people whose entire profession was making snails fatter. Once your snails reach peak chunkiness, you'd fry them and serve with wine sauce. The wealthy could afford to spend weeks preparing what was essentially an elaborate garden pest appetizer. Its conspicuous consumption taken to its logical extreme. Sea urchins got multiple preparation methods because apparently Romans couldn't decide on just one way to eat spiky sea creatures. Option 1. Boil with olive oil, fish stock, sweet wine, and pepper. Option 2. Crack them open, fill with beaten eggs, and cook Old Bain-Marie like some kind of medieval breakfast bowl. Option 3 was the convenience route. Buy them pre-processed in brine. Romans had sea urchin fast food. Imagine the marketing. Scorus's premium sea urchins pre-cracked for your convenience. They turned ocean floor cleanup into a luxury dining experience. The funny part is that Romans documented all of this like it was perfectly normal. No disclaimers. No, this might seem unusual warnings. Just straight up, here's how you fatten your snails for optimal flavor instructions, written with the same tone they use for bread recipes. They looked at the ocean floor and saw a buffet. They looked at garden pests and saw protein. They examined animal anatomy and found gourmet opportunities in places that would make modern diners run screaming from the restaurant. Every gross thing was a potential delicacy if you had the right spices, proper technique, and enough garum to mask any questionable flavors. Romans turned, ooh, what is that? Into, wow, this is expensive, through pure culinary audacity. Let's talk about laser, also known as silphium. The spice so valuable that Romans literally ate it out of existence. This came from one place on earth, Cyrenaica in modern-day Libya. It was so economically important that the city of Cyrene put silphium on their coins. Their literal money featured a plant. Silphium was like if truffles, saffron, and unicorn tears had a baby, and that baby could cure everything from indigestion to unwanted pregnancy. Romans used it as medicine, spice, birth control, and general-purpose life enhancer. It was the ancient equivalent of a superfood, except it actually worked and tasted amazing. The plant was apparently impossible to cultivate anywhere else. Romans tried. They really tried. But silphium would only grow wild in that specific region of Libya, and attempts to farm it elsewhere failed completely. It's like nature was trolling the entire Roman Empire with one impossibly finicky plant. Pliny the Elder tells us the most heartbreaking story in culinary history. The last known silphium stalk was given to Emperor Nero as a curiosity. Imagine being the person who had to explain to Nero that Rome had literally consumed an entire species out of existence. Well, sir, about that extinction thing we accidentally caused ... The Romans had eaten their favorite spice to death. They turned the plant into a legend by loving it too much. It's like if we ate all the chocolate trees and then spent centuries writing wistful poetry about what chocolate used to taste like. Modern substitutes like asafoetida don't even come close. Food historians have tasted every possible replacement, and nothing matches the descriptions of silphium from ancient sources. It's like trying to replace champagne with grape soda. Technically similar ingredients, but missing that special something that made people write love songs to a plant. Now, let's discuss Roman wine, which came with a complementary side of heavy metal poisoning. They made defrutum and cepa by reducing grape must in lead pots, because lead made it sweeter. And Romans loved sweet things, even if those sweet things were slowly killing them. The process was elegantly simple and horrifically toxic. Boil grape juice in lead vessels until it reduces by half or 2/3. The lead reacts with the fruit acids to form lead acetate, also known as sugar of lead. Sweet, syrupy, and absolutely loaded with neurotoxins. Romans knew lead was poisonous. They wrote about it. But they also thought the sweetness was worth the risk. It's like knowing cigarettes cause cancer, but deciding the flavor is too good to give up, except instead of lung cancer, you get dementia, kidney failure, and reproductive problems. The wealthy, who could afford the premium sweet wines, were getting the highest doses of lead. There's a cosmic irony here. The richer you were, the more likely you were to slowly poison yourself with fancy grape syrup. Success literally had a toxic taste. Some historians think chronic lead poisoning contributed to the fall of the Roman Empire, the elite slowly losing their minds from their own luxury foods. Others think this theory is overstated. Either way, it's a solid reminder that traditional doesn't always mean safe. The lead wine connection explains so much about late imperial Roman decision-making. Should we split the empire in half? Sure, this defudum is delicious. Should we hire Germanic barbarians to defend us from other Germanic barbarians? Why not, Pastor Sapa? Romans also had a thing for exotic honeys, some of which were actively hallucinogenic. Honey from bees that fed on certain flowers could cause vivid hallucinations, paralysis, or death. And Romans sought this stuff out on purpose. It's like ancient extreme sports, except the sport was eat increasingly dangerous food. The most famous toxic honey came from the Black Sea region, where bees fed on rhododendron flowers. This mad honey could knock you unconscious or send you on a terrifying psychedelic journey. Romans used it as a recreational drug and sometimes as a weapon. Nothing says Roman sophistication like weaponized bee products. So here we are. Can Roman foods have a clear a modern restaurant faster than a fire alarm and probably get the health department to shut down 3 city blocks? Fermented fish sauce that could strip paint, stuffed rodents with gourmet filling, extinct spices that made people weep, wine with a side of neurological damage. But here's the thing about judging ancient diets from our modern perspective. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is paying $40 for a single piece of fatty fish on rice. Someone else is eating cheese made from milk that's been aged in caves for years with specific molds. Someone is drinking coffee that passed through an animal's digestive system and costs more per pound than some people make in a month. Future archaeologists might find our food choices equally baffling. They'll dig through our landfills and find evidence of something called energy drinks that we apparently consume voluntarily. They paid extra for vegetables that hadn't been sprayed with chemicals. They fermented cabbage on purpose. They put pineapple on bread with cheese and called it sophisticated. The Romans weren't crazy. They weren't primitive. They weren't randomly eating gross things because they didn't know better. They were wealthy people with access to global trade routes, no food safety regulations, and a culture that valued conspicuous consumption above almost everything else. Given those parameters, stuffed dormice make perfect sense. So does fermented fish sauce, leaf-sweetened wine, and extinct plant seasonings. It's conspicuous consumption in edible form. Every weird ingredient told a story about wealth, connections, and cultural sophistication. Think about what Roman dinner parties were really like. You're not just eating food, you're consuming stories. This garum came from Spain through my merchant connections there. This silphium cost more than most people's houses. This flamingo required special permits from the African provinces. This ostrich took 6 months to arrange. Every bite was geography. Every dish was a display of power. Food wasn't just nutrition, it was networking, politics, and social climbing all rolled into one elaborate performance. The weirder and more expensive the ingredients, the better the story. Modern luxury dining does the same thing, just with different ingredients. We have restaurants where they tell you the exact farm your vegetables came from, the name of the cow your beef used to be, and the specific day your fish was caught. Same energy, different execution. The really fascinating part isn't that Romans ate these things. The really fascinating part is that they documented everything so obsessively. They wanted future generations to know exactly how to stuff a dormouse, prepare a flamingo, and optimize snail fattening. They thought this knowledge was important enough to preserve. Looking at these recipes today is like archaeological comedy. Every ingredient list is a window into a world where more money meant weirder food, where exotic wasn't just preferred, it was required, where normal food was for poor people and slaves. But Romans also understood something we've kind of forgotten. Food is culture. What you eat, how you prepare it, where your ingredients come from, all that tells a story about who you are and what you value. Romans just took that concept to absolutely insane extremes. Every culture thinks their food is normal and everyone else's is weird. Romans thought liquid fish guts were a perfectly reasonable condiment. We think processed cheese from a can is acceptable food. Neither of us gets to claim the moral high ground here. The real question isn't whether you try these Roman foods. The real question is what foods we eat today that future people will find absolutely revolting. My money's on anything with artificial colors that don't exist in nature, or foods with ingredient lists longer than most novels. Maybe in 2,000 years, some future content creator will make a video about 10 21st century foods you'd never try today, featuring mysterious substances like natural flavor, high fructose corn syrup, and butylated hydroxytoluene. They'll wonder how we survived eating things we couldn't pronounce. But until then, we can at least be grateful that our dinner parties don't require importing flamingos or maintaining dormouse fattening facilities. Although honestly, after reading all these recipes and thinking about the pure audacity of Roman dining, part of me is curious about what properly prepared garum actually tastes like. Just kidding. Sort of, maybe. The Romans clearly knew something we don't about turning weird ingredients into sophisticated cuisine. Even if that cuisine involved eating an entire ecosystem out of existence and slowly poisoning themselves with their own luxury foods. That's peak Roman right there. Go big or go home. Even if going big means literally eating your way through an entire species while drinking lead-sweetened wine and wondering why you're feeling a bit dizzy lately.